In today's video, guys, I'm going to share with you my top 10 tips for installing luxury vinyl plank on existing ceramic tile. All right, now here's the deal. Everybody's got an old part of the house. Maybe it's a front entrance, or maybe you've had a flood and you live slab on grade and they had to destroy some of your tile to get into the water and do a repair. Your insurance company's come along and said, here's a check, change all the flooring in your house. This is going to be an amazing way for you to update your flooring from an old tile to something brand new and modern on the market for a fraction of the cost, and you can do it in an afternoon. Today's project we're going to do really simple. It is a number 3 on the Jeffometer scale. It means basic installation, but you've got to have a couple of tools. You need at least a saw and a compressor to do some trim work, okay? And basically what I'm wearing right here, and that's it. Nice and simple. Tip number 1, and this tip refers to which product to buy. I get asked all the time, Jeff, what vinyl plank should I be buying? There's a lot of different product out there, everywhere from $2 to $7 a square foot. And the answer is, you want to buy, in a specific case for going over tile, you want to get a luxury vinyl plank. It has to be either an SPC or a VPC core, and that refers to the middle of the plank. The middle of the plank is key here. And what this refers to is how rigid that plank is. You see how that holds its shape? Okay? Rigid cores like this give you the ability to install over top of all of the grout lines in the floor without the grout line translating through, okay? Which means over time when you walk on it, you aren't going to get the grid in the floor where the grout line is. It'll bridge the gap. If you buy something that's got a soft, like a WPC core, or even the Home Depot LifeProof, you're going to find it translating all of the details underneath the floor, and that's a major problem. So make sure you buy a core like this. Today's video, we're actually using a product from Floor and Decor. It's called Cork, and it's got a titanium finish. It is a VPC core, which means it's very strong and very affordable. It comes in just under $4. Tip number 2 is the backing. You're gonna wanna use a Cork backing or something without any backing at all, and then buy a specific underlayment for sound control. Here's the thing, the lots of vinyl plank out there are sold with a really thin piece of rubber, and that's not an underlayment. It doesn't do sound control, and it will get rid of the clicking when you walk. It's not going to absorb any of the impact noise if you're wearing shoes, which, like in this case, we're in a front hall. You don't want to have something that's really thin rubber, because then the impact noise won't be absorbed. Cork does a great job of this. There are other products on the market. Check them out. They're going to have an STC rating and an IC rating, and that's impact control. Check these things out before you buy your underlayment. Make sure you're getting something that's going to control the sound. There's no need to pay extra money for a product that has something attached unless it's a Cork or an extremely quality pad. Now, you've heard me say this before, preparation is the key to success for a floor installation. And in this case, that means we're going to be very careful with removing the shoe molding or the base trim. Could be quarter round. This is installed after a tile floor in new home construction in the region where we live, as a way of getting a nice finish. The problem is, and you can see this, the builders always paint after the fact, and they get paint on the tile. So what I'm going to suggest is you score the paint line, and you slide your red bar in there, and you just take it off nice and easy. A lot of cases they use a 1.5 or a 2-inch brad nail to stick this on. Okay, and we're going to want to remove this gently so that we can reinstall it again later. Once you've got your trim off, grab yourself one of these nail remover tools. If you don't have it, you got to pick one up. It makes your life really easy. Pinch the nail, gentle pressure, and then you rock on the material. All right, and this works whether you're on the back side pulling nails out like I'm doing now, or if you're on the front side of a finished piece of wood, it'll remove the nail without denting the wood, okay? That is really a valuable tool, especially when you're doing softwood lumber. Double check everywhere you're working. Remove any nails that are still left in the trim. Your hands will thank you. And then use your flat bar to double check that it's all gone, and you clean up the caulking left on the baseboards. This is prep work, making sure that you're ready for when you finish the work, you're ready to reinstall the trim. Now I'm going to sweep up, and then it's time for step number 5, and that is grab a paintbrush, take all those base trims back out to the garage, set them up on a sawhorse or a table, and give them a finish coat of paint. And that is going to be really how we avoid getting paint on our new flooring after we install it later on at the end of the job. This is why we're painting. When you walk into a room and you're standing 6 or 8, 10 feet away, it looks fine, but when you get up close, you'll see all the little marks, even a little bit of chipping from when we cut it apart. All right, now we're just gonna take this brush, we're gonna dip it in the same semi-gloss white, and I'm just gonna run it along, okay? Change all this to a solid white color. That way when I'm finished, I don't have to get any paint near the flooring. So step 6, and now it's time to start laying the flooring. Here's the best part. As long as your tile floor is a decent installation and you don't have too much bridging or ridges, okay, what we call lippage, you can go directly on top as is, okay? If while you're getting ready to put your flooring down, you notice that you've got a really bad dip or a bad piece of lippage, you can go to the store and buy some pre-mixed grout and a grout float, and you can just take it on, throw a bump on the floor, and then spread it on an angle. Give it a little bit more substance. You're gonna have to leave that dry overnight, but it's a great way to help to level the floor to eliminate some of the movement that you're otherwise gonna have. Now, step 6 when you're laying your floor is always, always, always go the length of the room. Okay, flooring always looks best when you install it on the longest wall in the room. Okay, here we go. And if you're a DIYer and you're working alone, then you might want to consider getting this type of flooring. This type of flooring literally just locks in place by dropping it down and giving it a little shot with a rubber mallet. That way, your only locking joint is on one side, and you can do the entire room one plank at a time. If you get planks that have locking joints on both sides, then you're gonna have to work with somebody else because you have to do the entire row, lock it together, and then lift it into position together. This is DIY friendly. Step number 7 is always stagger your joints. Can't start the next row and have the joint finish in the same spot. The process for us is really simple. Measure the length of your joint, cut it in half. There we go. And in majority of cases, you can do half, you can do quarters, you can do thirds. It all depends on the length of the room. So make sure you measure the room, measure your plank, get an idea of what you're getting involved with. You can get a couple of cuts to get started with, so you can start 3 or 4 rows at the same time. That will save you a lot of time. That is some solid core, baby. Okay, like most, always inspect the gaps. This is the killer. These products have very small locking joints. Okay, get your product in there on an angle, slide back and forth, make sure there's no debris, and then you can drop it in place, all right? Here we go. Very important. Always blow out your joints when you're working. Otherwise, you're going to break the tongue and the groove in the joint. Slide it into place, lay it down, lock the ends together. When you're installing floor, the entire length of the room, one plank at a time, that's great. In a lot of cases, you can get to the end of the room, and all you do is you turn your plank around backwards, mark it, cut it, snap it in, and then you'll have a leftover piece you can start the next row. Sometimes though, you'll see this happening. Your board will only be a couple of inches longer than the last one, okay? You've got to resist the temptation to have your joints close together. The strength of these flooring is usually in the width that you transfer that joint power. So, here's a rule for you. Have your joints at least as far away as the board is wide, all right? And then you won't get this nasty joint effect that looks like this. That just screams rookie, okay? And you don't want to have that. And it's because it weakens the joint. So if there's imperfections in the floor, it's more likely to break the joint, all right? Now, again, always blow out your joints. You're going to be creating dirt as you go. Slide that in, okay? Slide back and forth. Make sure you got a good joint, good seal, okay? Make sure that they're sitting flush. If they're not sitting perfectly, you'll feel a ridge, okay? Listen to this. If everything feels nice and flush, step number 8 is take a locking block, all right? You want something that's not just grabbing the edge here, but it's putting direct pressure right on this edge, on the tongue. So turn that over, get this block on the tongue, just give it a little tap. Make sure that this joint is completely locked. If it's open even 3 or 5%, you're gonna start getting curves in your floor. It's gonna drive you crazy, and then it'll start to separate over time. So as long as the floor is all locked together really tight, even if it moves around, if you have an old house and you got a bit of a slope, it's not gonna disengage. All right, here we go. go. All right, once you've got your first 3 rows, grab the rest of your material, set it on the floor. This will help to keep it from sliding around when you're locking your joints. Trust me, this stuff is heavier than it looks. Okay. Now, of course, the only real secret to doing a vinyl floor like this is about being consistent, being really careful with the debris, keeping your joints clean. And if you don't feel like blowing at the floor all day long, you can always get your air compressor and put a blowing attachment on it, and you can give things a little shot of air while you're working. Put it in place. Once you have things square, you can move through this pretty quick. Of course, everybody wants to know a few things about vinyl. There's always kinds of questions out there. I get them all the time. Jeff, what about transitions? And I'm one of the only people in the industry who's been telling you for years that vinyl doesn't expand and contract, so you don't have to worry about transitions. Finally, there are products out there that have done the testing, and they agree with me, and they put it on the box. Right? 100 feet times 100 feet of vinyl plank, 10,000 square feet, no transitions needed. This has the lowest rate of expansion and contraction of any building material in the home, even less than steel. All right. Which makes it perfect for any climate and installing loose lay like this over any surface. Finally, we get to the good part, right? Here we go. Now, how to finish off the room. This is where you make it or break it as a DIYer. Let's do this again. We'll cut our plank in half. We'll keep with our consistent grout lines. Score, flip it, snap it. What to do? This joint is actually the tongue and is going in this groove. So what we do is we have to measure it backwards. Now, I don't want to take this measurement here because this side ends up over here. So what we do is we go like this. That's where the end of my board is. So I want to measure this like this and put my mark. I want to measure it like this and then put my mark. And you'll see I'm actually marking the floor just inside of the tongue. I'm intentionally leaving a small gap along the baseboard. When we're done, we're going to be reinstalling that shoe mold, and that's 3/8 of an inch thick, which is plenty of space so that I can drop this in nice and easy and lock it in and cover the gap with the trim. This is an easy one. Now, the way we want to cut this is the one tool that we haven't shown you yet. This is the table saw. And it's not always going to be straight, because when's the last time you saw a house that was built perfectly square? It's not going to happen. So let's get out to the table saw and I'll show you how to cut this. Of course, the secret here is when you're cutting to have this line lining up on the outside of your blade. Okay? If you just run it right down the middle, you're actually going to cut off a lot more material than you want every time you make a mistake. And since we're not cutting straight, I can't use the guide. So because we can't cut straight is why we need the shoe mold trim when we get back inside. Just remember, always wear your safety glasses when you're working with that on a table saw. In a table saw, the blade is coming at you and it's always throwing debris on your face. And chunks of vinyl are no joke, okay? I know I'm a safety second guy, but this just makes good sense to be smart. All right, now we're gonna set this down. We're gonna use this little red barb tool that we use to remove the cord around to put in and create some compression to make sure that the joints are locked, okay? Set it in, give it a twist. We're pushing this way, make sure those joints are locked, and then there's no ridge. What I'm gonna do right now is the most difficult installation that's even possible, so that you can see that you have options, and that is around the door. Now you have options here. We can do this. If you're extremely committed to this concept, and you're like, there's no way I'm ever gonna wanna lift this floor up and have tile again, then you can take your saw and cut your casing at the new height, and you can actually install your floor and slide it underneath. That only works if you start at the door. As you can see, here's my joint. There's no way for me to get this flooring in that joint and drop it in place and slide it underneath both sides of the door at the same time. Part of the problem with large plank flooring is getting great details around the doors. So we need a different tool for this. What we have to do is line up our plank in the groove, okay? And we have to do some really detailed measuring from the groove here to the groove here. And that is 2 1/8. Wow. So I'm going to measure from the casing where I'm making contact, 2 1/8. Okay. And I am 2 3/8 here. I'm going to put my straight edge against the door jamb, okay, and I'm going to draw that line as well. The goal here is to draw something out, and the first time we cut this template, we're going to cut on the inside of all of our lines. We're going to take this side of my tool, it's from Empire, has all these little teeth, and it'll translate all the information on this casing just by putting pressure. I'm going to start, in this case, I'm going to start right on the edge of the casing, right up until it's going past that corner on the door jamb. Okay? Then I can take this out and I can take that piece of material and translate and draw that right out. Okay. In this case, because I've got this mark on my door jamb, I'm going to line my pins up on my door jamb mark. Okay, we're going to push all that back. Get that right where it is. We're going to line this up like that. All right. There's my mark. There's my mark on my trim. So I'll set that there. And I'll put this over here. And those are my 2 parameters. Okay. Now, I'm going to do a straight line from this, which is 2 3/8. 1 2 3/8. Okay. On the material, I'll mark that spot. And I'm going to do this. This is not as crucial because I get the quarter round again. Now, I know a lot of people will say you can do this kind of installation with a jigsaw. Getting a great detail around your casing is almost impossible without a table saw. So let's go outside and have a little bit of fun and play around. This might take 2 or 3 trips. It might even take 2 or 3 boards. Depending on your experience level, don't get frustrated. Another thing to know, the door jambs themselves might not be square. A lot of times they're installed by builders, and that one's not square. It's about a 1/4 inch out from inside to outside. Okay? So these little details are going to become really, really apparent. We also want to finish this floor just on the inside here. All right, and we're going to get this measurement in a minute. We'll talk about how to finish because we're actually going to stop the vinyl in the hallway and transition to tile. This way we get to show you how to do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my black marker. I'm going to trace inside the line and I'm going to cut up to the black line, and then we can go in and double check to see how close our translation is here. Because in this kind of sunshine, it is really hard to see. Whoops. Okay. All right, now we're gonna go in and see how well this fits. And when I'm finished, if I don't like how jagged it is, I can always file it down with an actual wood file. All right, so before we can install and double check our measurements, we gotta remove the door. And when you're doing that, it's best to take out the pin. If you keep on taking out the screws of the hinge, you're gonna make the holes really weak, and then the doors are just gonna fall off over time. Always remove the pin, little love tap, and then once you've got a gap there, you can use the claw. Okay, there we go. Okay, there we go. I'll set that over here. Okay, so I've just set my plank in the way here. And I'm noticing I'm a little bit tight on the door on both sides. We anticipated that though, right? Remember I marked my line on the inside of that mark? If you try to make it perfect the first time, you always don't account for something. And it's better to be perfect every time after your second or third try than try to be perfect every time on your first try. Also looking at this line here, I want to make sure that that is nice. I'm going to be good there. Going to be good there. Okay, I'm just going to trim this up real quick and I'll be right back. And in case you haven't noticed, we have merch now. Make sure you check it out, homerenovationdiy.com. Get your merch today. Cheers. Second try. Okay, and here's where we're running into that problem I talked about where the door frame isn't square. It's causing a gap to open up here. Alrighty. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just mark this from 0 to hero. That side's going to be perfect. I'm actually liking this, and I'm going to just take a little bit of this material on the back side off. I'm liking what I'm seeing overall. Like I was saying, now we're seeing this issue here with the doorstop. Now, I have a 6-foot piece of trim, transition molding. Tip number 10. When you go to the store, you're gonna wanna find a transition that kind of matches up with your flooring, okay? It's not always gonna be perfect, especially if you don't buy it all at the same time from the same manufacturer. But what you're gonna get is, this is what we call a reducer. And it has a high side and it has a low side that makes contact with this floor, all right? And then it has this area here, which is designed to go into a metal track. But when you're working over ceramic, you don't want to use the metal track. You don't want to be drilling holes in the ceramic and all that mess. So I'm going to show you a cheat for that. So our transition is going to be 28 and an 8. So let's just measure this off. Cut that. Be right back. Step number 10 is installing a transition. Here's the system. This is the doorway, and the door is set from the door jamb to here. So your transition, you want it to look nice from both sides of the room, okay? Which means you don't want it sticking out past the door. So you're gonna go like this, and that's gonna be where it gets installed, all right? From under the door, and when the door is closed, you're still gonna see it from inside the bathroom. Newsflash, you're gonna see it in there no matter what happens. What we're going to do is we're just going to draw a little line here on the tile, and then our floor, we want it to be a little bit longer than that up to this point, okay? That's the depth of our floor. We want to make sure that this is not going to be in contact with the floor and that this makes contact with the tile. So we're just going to mark this a few spots here. All right, now I can just measure from there. I'm looking at 6 5/8. So I'm at 6 5/8 on the leading edge of my floor. There. Make a mark. And then over here I'm going to measure it off. And I'm 6 and almost 3/4. 6 5/8 again. That's amazing because the wall isn't square, but the door is. Never stop being amazed. Now, we're going to draw that line, run that through the saw. I'll be right back. All right, now I'm just going to make sure that there's no debris in my grooves here. In and out. With the saw a few times. Got to be real careful here. Now we're going to just see how close our measurements are. Still a little bit of a gap here. This is a great teachable moment. Boom. Because we're using 3/8, I can always pull this back tight to it, okay? Now, let's see how close we are. Wow. Make sure we're happy with the way it's feeling in the lock. Not happy there. So I can put that in and give it a twist. There we go, close that up. There's a little bit of gap around the casing. What you're gonna find is that you can fill that gap with just a little bit of paintable caulking, all right? And then you're gonna be good to go. So don't worry too much about it. The thing you don't wanna do here is cut underneath that casing if there's a chance that at a later date, you're gonna wanna tear all these floors out and do a brand new tile floor. Because in that event, you're gonna have to buy really thick stone, which costs a fortune. Or you're gonna be investing in all brand new door casings and baseboards and everything else because everything will have been undercut and all the trims will be way too high for your new installation. Now we got that there. The secret to installing this is actually this. Take the backside, grab yourself a run of two-sided tape. This is a brand new roll. I gotta cut my edge in. Here we go. Install it where it's going to be sitting on top of your vinyl. And then you simply peel back that transition. Make sure that the corners won't be sticking out past the door. Done. Perfect every time. There are two more quick steps, but before we go any further, if you like getting this information, give this video a thumbs up and share it with all your friends. Installing a floating floor like this may sound like an easy project, but I've seen a lot of people over the years who've joined our membership program who struggle with a basic installation like this because they don't take time to watch the whole video or they get bad information and they're led to believe that it's a lot simpler. Everything about this kind of project is in the details. Now, we still have to put on the shoe mold, we still have to reinstall the door, we're gonna have to cut the bottom down. You might even have bifold doors. We're gonna answer all those questions right now in this video, but share this with all your friends before we move any further. The secret to cutting a door. If you're adding a 1/4 inch of flooring, then you can get rid of a 1/4 inch of door. Line your pencil up, lock it in your fingers, and scribe. Then cut. So now that the door's cut to size, we're just gonna stick it back on the hinges. There we go. And use a rubber mallet. That way you're not gonna mark up your freshly painted door. Get the pins back in. Sometimes you just need a real hammer. Okay, now the only thing left to do is really just to reinstate all of the cord around and do the caulking work, and we're pretty much finished. All right, so now that we're here, we're finishing up, we just need to get a little bit of acrylic Dynaflex caulking. I'm gonna recommend something like this. Not every product is available in every market, but what we're looking at here is a paintable siliconized caulking. This particular product dries in 2 hours. Now, when you're looking at your caulking, here's a free tip for you. The faster it dries, okay, the less flexibility it has. So there's a 15-minute quick dry, there's a 30-minute door and window, and then there's a Dynaflex, which is 2 hours. Basically what's going on here, the longer it takes to dry, the more elasticity is in the product. And I like that. So especially around doors and windows, and anywhere where you just want to make sure that you're never going to have a gap issue. So we set the old trim back in place, throw in a couple of nails, try to do it on the top side of the trim so that once we put in the caulking, when you come back with your paintbrush to put a little bit of paint on it, you don't have to cut all the way down to the very bottom. You only have to paint across the top, and I'll show you that in just a minute. Now here we're going to add our caulking. Anywhere that is damaged, make sure you put an extra little bit in there. Okay. And here's my system. I use my finger. I take all the extra and use it to fill my nail holes. Okay. Top side of the trim, push down, roll, nail. This will close the gap. All right. You can throw all the extra caulking in these gaps as you go along. If you're not comfortable doing that with a finger alone, you can always add a little painter's tape down there. Do whatever works for you. This stuff dries up and rubs off your hands just like the old wood glue back when we were in preschool. Again, push down, roll. Okay, you don't want to nail through the floor. You want to nail into your baseboard. One more thing I wanted to show you. In the event that you don't have a swing door and you've got a bifold door, you're going to have a bracket that looks something like this, right? If you take the bracket, and a lot of times they don't drill a hole where the tile is, they just screw into the wall, and it leaves this bracket a little bit loose. You can take your two-sided tape and build it up 3 layers inside here and stick it onto the vinyl, and that'll be enough to give it a really good piece of grip. All you do is take your clear silicone and put a little bead on the back side into your closet, okay, and that'll give it a stability so it isn't moving around. When your bracket is moving, that means the part in the door is moving, and that starts to open up the hole, and your whole door will fall apart over time. So be careful with that. Otherwise, quick recap, make sure you got a decent product, okay? Pick the right product, get all the right tools, don't get creative. Make sure every joint that you put together, you're completely happy with before you move forward. Tap every block in, and then, you know, just take your time. You can do this. It's only a level 3 on the Jeff-O-Meter. It only takes a few hand tools and a couple of power tools, and you too can remodel your entire house, paint job and new flooring, earn a lot of cash. If you got any questions, put them in the comment section. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't done it yet. And check out this video right here if you want to install vinyl on wood floors. It has a couple of different tips and tricks and different process for that. We filmed this a few years ago, but it's still very relevant. Luxury vinyl plank. See you next time.